gloves. We're ready for the big scene now. Has everyone got their blood bags?
Blood bags, everybody!
Now, remember, I want all the Babylonians off the ziggurat double quick so that when it collapses we get a good view, right?
Got that,
That
Babs?
palace eunuch there's wearing a wristwatch. Come on, come on. All right, now cue the dinosaur, ready with the bouncing heads, and action. And cue the earthquake. Lower the mothership. And cut! Oh, marvellous, marvellous. How was that for you, camera?
Ready when you are, Sir Lionel.
Happiness is a cigar called Hamlet.
Radio ads provide some of the best and the worst of radio. That Hamlet ad from the early 90s, before tobacco advertising was banned on radio, is a perfect example of a well-crafted 40-second mini-drama which makes you smile, whilst reminding you of the brand. Although some radio ads are boring, some are shouty and incredibly irritating, there are plenty of gems. There are some people who think radio advertising is hugely undervalued.
Radio ads are a work of art, an unheralded work of art in many ways. They can be wonderful vignettes of life. In my view, the best ads are the ones you don't think you're listening to. They get into your psyche.
There are some great ones. I mean, it got to the point in radio advertising years ago where people would say, forget the programming, just play the advertisements. I want to hear the advertising.
Paul Rowley and Benny Brown, both old radio hands who appreciate the power, creativity and sheer entertainment value of the best of radio advertising. I grew up listening to commercial radio. Everything was sponsored in those days. My professional interest in radio advertising started in my days as a boy DJ in small-town Australia, where I was immersed in ads and even wrote many for the station's clients. Then for many years I was surrounded by them when I was presenting phone-in shows on LBC from the mid-70s. In this programme I'll be looking at how radio advertising in the UK has evolved over the last 80 years, and picking out some of the most memorable and creative, as well as some of the most irritating ads. I'll be looking at how advertisers have tried to grab our attention by making us laugh, as in the Hamlet ads, by lodging a jingle in our brains.
Start the day with Weetabix, Weetabix, Weetabix.
By shocking us.
This is Janice, and this is what she has to say about smoking.
Or by dazzling us with the sheer awfulness of their performances.
If it's a TV that you want, or could it be a video?
We'll hear more of those later. First, though, we're going back to the beginning. Radio stations broadcast from within the UK were not allowed to carry ads until 1973, but in practice, radio ads could be heard here long before that, from the pirate radio ships in the 60s, and even before that, from stations based on the continent. The very first commercial broadcasting to the UK was thought to be in 1921, and by the 1930s, Radio Luxembourg was broadcasting sponsored programmes which reached large numbers of people in the UK.
This is a programme presented by the makers of Ovaltine, especially to the League of Ovaltinis.
We are the Ovaltines, little girls and boys. Make your request, we'll not refuse you. We are here just to amuse you.
Sean Street, Professor of Radio at Bournemouth University.
Anybody of a certain age will still be able to sing the League of Ovaltinis jingle. I would think it's probably the most successful advertising jingle of all time.
We all drink Ovaltine, we're happy girls and boys.
And these early advertisers didn't just make memorable jingles. Their advertising techniques were more sophisticated than we might expect from such a young industry. Sean Street explains why.
That was largely because the major American advertising agencies had moved into London. They understood how commercial radio works. They'd been doing it for 10 years, and they knew how to apply it.
One of the big American agencies which came to London at that time was J. Walter Thompson. In this 1938 recording, they demonstrated techniques to potential advertisers. First, how different styles of music could be used to promote two different brands of Rowntree's chocolates.
First example, Rowntree Rendezvous, a light orchestral concert of popular domestic appeal, suited to the early morning hour.
Very different from that deemed suitable for selling more up-the-market chocolate.
Now note the contrast in type of music used for a second Rowntree product, delicious Black Magic chocolates. we portray in sound the romantic and glamorous appeal featured in our newspaper layout.
There were other techniques too. For instance, the 1930s equivalent of humorous advertising.
And now, a direct sales message carefully combined with good-natured leg pulling.
Schubert's Unfinished Symphony, part of the first movement. Why didn't Schubert finish his symphony? Why don't you shut up? Well, why wasn't it finished? Well, couldn't somebody else finish his symphony?
For goodness sake, be quiet, Joe.
They also gave examples of how emotion could be used in selling, stressing to the buttoned-up businessmen of the 1930s that, yes, this could be an effective way of selling to the target audience.
Very probably you, as a businessman, will dislike this sentimental program. That's only natural. But on the other hand, we have proved from experience that for certain products, this type of emotional appeal is a sure winner among women listeners.
The techniques used by these early advertisers appealing to emotion, leg-pulling, the use of music and the jingle have all been exploited by radio advertisers since then as they came in and out of fashion. And then in the 1950s there was the first memorable example of the client who appeared in his own ad. Horace Batchelor. He made a lasting impression on Tim Delaney, later to become a big shot in advertising. He was one of Radio Luxembourg's youthful listeners in the 1950s.
I remember Radio Luxembourg and this very crackly sound that used to come in and out, and then there would be someone called Horace Batchelor.
This is Horace Batchelor at the microphone, the inventor of the famous in-for-draw method for the treble chance.
He had some scheme that we could join for winning the pools.
And my ingenious method can help you to win also.
I mean, even as a child, I used to think, well, if he was so good, why wasn't he already wealthy and not doing radio ads?
Send now to Horace Batchelor, Department 1, Keynsham, spelt Keynsham, Keynsham, Bristol.
The ads made Mr. Batchelor famous. When he died, the Times ran an obituary. He might not have taught people how to win the pools, but he sure did teach a lot of people how to spell Keynsham. By the mid-1960s, a new source of radio ads came along, a string of pirate stations. Although radio advertising transmitted from the UK wasn't allowed, well, the pirates got around the rules because they were based on ships. The largest of these were Radio Caroline and Radio London. They pumped out commercials like these.
Calling all home buyers, the executive-minded in particular. If you're looking for a dream home, visit our site at Hockley Lane, Whalley Bridge.
But for Radio Caroline, the ads were initially not bringing in enough cash.
They were losing money hand over fist. They had an audience of 8 million a week. Weekly circulation of 8 million, and were losing money, which that took talent I didn't begin to understand.
Situated in a sheltered Jodrell meadow.
Terry Bate came over from Canada to turn around Caroline's finances, and he brought with him some big clients, like Colgate-Palmolive.
So get Colgate Dental Cream, Colgate Fluoride, and girls, get your free nylon.
He also brought new ways to bring in the advertisers.
One of the things we did in Canada was promotion packages. We put together contests, proof of purchase, entries, etc. The first of these, and there were lots of them over the couple of years, was Caroline Cash Casino.
So let's play Caroline Cash Casino.
The audience had to send in packets and wrappers of products of the companies sponsoring the competition to be eligible for the cash prize.
And inside we find the correct enclosure, Findus garden peas.
Our average mail after the first couple of months, we were getting 1.5 to 2 million letters a week.
Which Bate made good use of when one advertiser was thinking of cancelling their sponsorship.
We loaded up some trucks and went and dumped the mail on their front lawn on their headquarters in North London. They renewed immediately.
Yes, something's convinced.
Yes.
That is it! By golly, it is! Oh, my heavens! Yes, 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 that is it!
Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation.
Before long, the big brands were flocking to the pirate stations.
If you wanna go nuts, if you gotta go nuts in a big, big way. Go Golden Wonder Peanuts and get the nuttiest taste today.
Tony Blackburn, who was a DJ on both Caroline and London, was a big fan of the 60s commercials with their upbeat, cheerful sounds.
Anytime, every time that you've used a pen, bring the smile back with Brillo. Anytime, every time that you've used a dish, bring the smile back with Brillo.
The first thing I used to do if I was on a daily show to see how much advertising I'd got, and if it was filled up, I thought, great.
Brillo on the shelf and your pens get...
I think the commercials certainly in the 60s did have a feel-good factor to them, yes. I mean, they were just very up. In fact, I think a really good commercial contributed to the programme. I remember on Big L Radio London playing the Weetabix commercial, which I thought was terrific. You know, start your day with Weetabix.
Start the day with Weetabix, Weetabix for breakfast.
But the advertising Terry Bate brought to Caroline wasn't all catchy jingles promoting consumer products such as Weetabix.
As you know, there are many brands of God in the world, and there's an ad agency in New York that handles various brands of God. We took their religious programs, we would only broadcast them in the middle of the night, and made huge money out of these various, send one thin dime for the Lord sort of thing.
The World Tomorrow. Garner Ted Armstrong now brings you the plain truth about today's world news, with the prophecies of the world tomorrow.
And greeting friends around the world. This is Garner.
I remember, sounds crazy now, in the last complete year, we did something like $1.5 million worth.
To a goalie, it's a save, save, save.
Terry Bate also brought cigarette advertising to Radio Caroline.
To the colonel, it's a regiment. To a smoker, it's a tent.
The cigarette companies in the UK had all agreed not to advertise on radio. I mean, they had this private agreement between them. I had a friend in Toronto, who was an Englishman, funnily enough, who was the marketing director of Rothmans. He came into the UK, we broke it wide open, and we did sell cigarettes on Radio Caroline.
Rothmans bought some of the most prominent slots, most notably on the night of the 14th and 15th of August 1967, when the Wilson government's Marine Offences Bill was intended to force the pirates off the air. It came into effect at midnight. Sean Street explains.
Just before midnight, Rothmans of Pall Mall had sponsored a 30-second commercial for Consulate cigarettes.
We have 30 seconds to go until midnight.
It's a new idea in smoking. Come in on the move to Menthol Fresh Consulate.
And I would love to know what Caroline charged Rothmans for that advert, because everybody was listening, because it had got out into the press that Caroline was going to continue. So everybody below a certain age was tuning in to say, what's going to happen?
How many people would have been listening?
It's difficult to actually pinpoint it because there are, we don't have specific figures, but certainly millions of people.
This is Radio Caroline. It is now 12 midnight.
As midnight came and went, Radio Caroline stayed on air, defying the government's ban. And soon the station was broadcasting mysterious new ads, as Terry Bate remembers.
We couldn't sell advertising in the UK. It was illegal for anyone to spend money with us. But we were airing phony commercials. For example, we aired the Blue Dot contraceptive pill commercial. It's a 10-second commercial, and it goes something like, we put a blue dot on our contraceptive pills so that you can tell them from aspirin. That can save you a lot of headaches. The rationale, there were some advertisers who continued to buy advertising against the law after the bill went through on the 15th of August. So we had to put up a smokescreen by putting up other commercials.
Caroline soldiered on with its phony ads for a few months. Then it was a goodbye to Caroline. But in 1973, legal commercial radio on the UK mainland began with LBC in London, which started at 6 o'clock on the morning of the 8th of October. And straight after their news, the first commercial was heard.
And that's the news.
I'm speaking to you from high up in the Royal Albert Hall in London.
Birdseye, which bought the first advertising spot on LBC, wanted it to be a big event.
Be upstanding with the Birdseye Company to welcome London Broadcasting.
Birdseye welcomes radio. News flashes, greats and singers. Good luck, commercial radio. From Birdseye to Fingers.
And 8 days later, when Capital Radio came on the air, it was honoured in the same fashion by Birdseye.
Be upstanding with the Birdseye Company to welcome Capital Radio.
The third new station to open was Radio Clyde in Glasgow, and by now Terry Bate was involved with this station.
In Glasgow, we specifically went out and sold the first spot. I'm not sure that we got any more money for it.
The City of Glasgow Police can offer literally dozens of different kinds of job. If you are interested in cars or criminals...
Paul Rowley, who's worked as a radio reporter for many years, remembers his excitement back in that time when commercial radio began in the Northwest.
On my reel-to-reel tape recorder, I recorded the first programme on Piccadilly Radio in Manchester.
Fine day in the Northwest.
And the first ad was a winner. It was for Northwest Gas.
You think I'm getting up at this time in the morning to listen to the first radio commercial in Manchester? You've got another think coming. It's ridiculous, you and your firsts.
It was a real coup to be the first ad on a commercial radio station in your region.
Quiet, love. Here it comes.
With prestige companies competing for the first slot, things looked good for the commercial stations. But that soon changed. The economy bombed in 1974, and Ted Heath's confrontation with the miners led to the 3-day week. Tony Vickers ran the sales department at Capital at the start. Did he have any idea what he was letting himself in for?
Not a bloody clue. It couldn't have been a bigger horror story. We were at the end of the queue. Television companies were squealing for money, newspapers were squealing for money. There was no money about.
Devastatingly, the big brands turned away from radio.
They used all sorts of arguments. It wasn't seen as a national medium, and therefore it was not attractive to national advertisers. They preferred to wait and see what was going to happen before they put their money down.
But to Tony Vickers' surprise, smaller local companies started to fill the gap.
There was Sapphire Carpets, Alders of Croydon. We had a lovely man who came out of absolutely nowhere called Freddie Barrett.
No, you'll find that place behind Oxford Street. I'm Freddie Barrett, and I think I'm famous...
Oh,
that Barrett! Where's your nearest...
It's an appalling commercial.
Heard of me? I sing my song. Then you'll know me. Barrett's, come to Barrett.
See, Lucille, I told you the English are eccentric.
But it sold a lot of product. And he had 4 or 5 shops.
He was a real person, was he?
He was a real person. He made a record of Come to Barrett's, Barrett's Liquor Mart.
Barrett's, come to Barrett's.
Only a democracy could throw up a Freddie Barrett.
It was dreadful. But he was a very important force for our station in the early days.
And before long, small companies were advertising on their local stations all around the country.
Walsh's of High Street, Sheffield.
Ladies, come to Walsh's great sale for sewing and knitting. Sewing machines down in price.
It's the new Rackham's, formerly Clarkson's Furniture Store at Snow Hill, Wolverhampton, and their spring sale is now on.
And more Freddie Barretts emerged, clients who became well known through appearing in their own commercials. Paul Rowley.
Getting the client to voice the ads was incredibly risky. I suspect it could backfire big style. But when I was at Radio City in Liverpool in the 1970s and 80s, I think everybody will remember John Leach at the Widnes Car Centre.
Hi, this is John Leach, Managing Director.
Seemingly, everybody in the area knew him.
John Leach is still advertising today, and is clearly chuffed to have made such an impact.
I wouldn't say I've become a celebrity, but I'm well known as a result of continuous radio advertising. Often enough, when I'm speaking to people that may not necessarily know me, when I mention the name or the phone number, the amount of times people have caught on, oh, you're the guy on the radio. 0151 420 2000.
420 2000.
One of the local ads that stood out for me from my time at LBC was this one.
The World of Melanie Parker.
Isn't it wonderful? The Melanie Parker song has won the Euroflop Song Contest.
The World of Melanie Parker was run on the breakfast show as a mini soap opera, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Is the vicar worrying needlessly, or is Melanie's Transylvanian host a bit of a lady killer? And why does Augustus Barnett carry such an amazingly wide range of wines and spirits? How does he keep his prices so low? Listen tomorrow to episode 243 of The World of Melanie Parker, brought to you by Augustus Barnett.
It was quite unusual. Not like most other advertising, it was more like an actual programme. Although, as you could hear, it was clearly signposted that it was promoting an off-licence. Of course, it had to be. Radio advertising was highly regulated when it was legalised in the UK, because of fears that we might become like American radio. Perish the thought. Sean Street explains.
There was almost a paranoia among regulators in this country. It mustn't be like American radio. The listener must always be aware when it's part of editorial content and when they're being sold something. I was sitting and being interviewed on an American radio station some years ago, and we were talking, and I was answering a question, and then suddenly the presenter said, "Are the tyres on your car safe?" And I thought she was asking me a direct question. In fact, she was selling Pirelli. We were very conscious that that should never happen here. The regulation was extremely tough, and it's a wonder more commercial stations didn't go out of business under the yoke of it.
Gradually, the big brands did start to use radio. By the early 90s, regulations had been relaxed, and 3 national independent stations came on air. Radio's share of the advertising cake, which had never risen above 3% between the early 70s and early 90s, rose steadily over the next decade or so, and is now around 6%. But why had it taken so long for radio to get a decent foothold in the advertising market? It wasn't just the difficult economic climate in which commercial radio was born, according to Tony Vickers. It was something more fundamental.
The big advertising agencies didn't know how to write radio. I mean, we are the only country where commercial radio has started after commercial television has been successful. So you would go into an advertising agency and the creative directors say, "Well, I can't possibly do that, darling. I don't know how to write a radio commercial. And in the moment, we're just about to go out to Tobago and shoot this Bounty commercial. And I can't possibly do it because my girlfriend's booked up and she's coming with me." It was a big problem. There was a man called Tony Hertz who came from an advertising agency called McCann Erickson, who made an effort and worked hard with it. But I mean, radio is a wonderful medium, as you well know. It's the medium of the mind. But they didn't know how to do it.
Tony Hertz was an American who came here in the early 70s, bringing his US perspective of what radio could achieve. He was commissioned to write a guide to making commercials to show the possibilities of radio advertising. A magic genie tutored a sceptical TV ad man who wondered how scenes with no sound could possibly be brought to life on radio.
What about beautiful food commercials? You know, close-ups of shimmering, shivering jelly with pieces of fresh fruit in magnificent crystal dishes. Great mounds of ripe red strawberries with masses of double Devon cream. Great blue-veined Stilton enthroned on his board, and next to it, in a splendid Georgian decanter, Blogg's vintage port. What a moment. How do you show that lot without pictures? Well, you just did.
Tony Hertz, like many others in the industry, was inspired by the great American comedian and satirist Stan Freberg. Freberg made thousands of radio commercials, including this famous illustrative ad from the 1950s, which demonstrated how ambitious radio could be, as opposed to television.
Radio? Why should I advertise on radio? There's nothing to look at, no pictures.
Listen, you can do things on radio you couldn't possibly do on TV.
That'll be the day.
All right, watch this. Okay, people, and now when I give you the cue, I want the 700-foot mountain of whipped cream to roll into Lake Michigan, which has been drained and filled with hot chocolate. Then the Royal Canadian Air Force will fly overhead towing a 10-ton maraschino cherry, which will be dropped into the whipped cream to the cheering of 25,000 extras. All right, cue the mountain. Cue the Air Force. Cue the maraschino cherry. Okay, 25,000 cheering extras. Now, you want to try that on television?
Certainly, America produces some of the most creative radio advertising in the world. One campaign, envied by many UK advertising people, is the Real Men of Genius campaign for the beer Bud Light. It's a campaign Tony Hertz greatly admires.
Bud Light is probably worldwide the most famous radio advertising campaign for some years. They've done probably 200 executions of the same campaign. And what it is picking on foibles of American characters and just raising a toast to them.
Bud Light presents Real Men of Genius.
Real men of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Cargo Pants Designer.
Mr. Cargo Pants Designer.
You finally gave us what we wanted. The military look without all that bothersome drilling, marching, and shooting.
Fashion victory.
Is that a banana in your pocket? Yes. And an orange. And a pocket comb. And an extra set of keys. And my sunglasses.
Totally
prepared now.
How many times have you been in a restaurant and thought, man, I wish I'd brought my own jar of mayonnaise? Now you can.
Yeah!
So crack open an ice cold Bud Light, oh Prince of the Pockets. Some may fill your shoes, but no one can fill your pants.
Mr. Cargo Pants Design.
Bud Light Beer, Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis, Missouri.
Yes, that 2003 ad is one of my favourites as well. But Britain has also made some great commercials. There are different schools of thought about what makes a great ad, and fashions have waxed and waned over the years. On the whole today, commercials sound quite different from those of the 60s and 70s. Then, most ads sounded bright and cheerful, and the jingle ruled. But if you mention that word jingle to almost anyone in advertising today, this is the kind of reaction you'll get.
Very, very uncool.
They're a kind of lowest form of life.
Jingle now is kind of, oh no, don't mention jingle, because that's all very passé.
Tony Hertz, Tim Delaney and Nick Angel, who are all in the business of making radio commercials today, wouldn't dream of using jingles in their ads. But Andrew Ingram, who's written about radio advertising and worked in the industry, is willing to stick his neck out and speak up for the jingle.
Jingles have almost been outlawed in advertising at the moment. It's a slightly dirty word. Jingles were popular in the 50s, 60s, 70s. But they are fantastically powerful. They do make you remember things. The most famous one of all, I think, on these islands is you can't get quicker than a quick fit fitter.
You can't get better than a quick fit fitter. We're the ones that trust.
Quick fit.
And the nation goes around humming it.
These things get into your brain. It's a bit like letting something in. It's not going to leave you.
The Germans have a lovely expression, Ohrwurm, which translates literally as earworm. It's the idea that something goes into your ear and sort of wriggles around in there, and you'd have to use a hook to get it out because it just won't come out. And jingles are like that.
And here are some that have earwormed their way into my brain.
Oval fruits made to make your mouth water. Fresh with the tang of citrus. More refreshing fruit flavors.
Juicy, chewy, oval fruit.
Vogue has the prices that are the very nicest. Vogue has a selection that everyone adores. Come to Vogue Interiors for furniture superior. Vogue cash and carry, furniture in your...
Our ribbons, too good for our ribbons.
Nice people to do business with.
Given that it's so difficult to get them out of your head, why do some of these jingle skeptics like Tim Delaney not rate them?
I know jingles stick. Murray Mints. People of a generation here will understand that. And Curry Motors, nice people to do business with, they're all singing the end of that. It's not that you remember. You can remember jingles. It's whether they motivated you to do anything or whether they just sat there being what they are. I'm not sure they're the best use of persuading something that you have a point of view about, a product or a good product that you want them to at least think about.
Now, this attitude to jingles today leaves old radio hounds like Tony Blackburn bemused, to say the least.
Well, I think anybody who says that jingles have had their day are completely mad, and they should seek employment elsewhere if they're actually working in advertising agencies, because the jingle does work very effectively. And the fact that I can't remember many commercials that we play nowadays is probably because and I can remember a jingle from the 60s that told me to start my day with Weetabix. It must say something. And I can remember the Ovaltinas and those sort of things. I can remember those jingles. But I can't, there's nothing that sticks out in my mind there.
You work on a number of radio stations.
Yes.
And in the past week, you will have therefore heard many, many commercials. Can you remember any of them?
To be honest with you, no.
And some proponents are subtly trying to reintroduce them by rebranding the jingle. Tony Hertz.
Now they call them sonic brand triggers, which are essentially jingles.
But the new jingle, or sonic brand trigger, is slightly different from the old sing-along word set to catchy music. Words are out, only the music remains, as Nick Angel and Andrew Ingram explain.
Now we're all far posher than that, and we will use carefully crafted or selected music that will either sort of emotionally underpin a script or perhaps, provide some sort of attachment with the product.
Like the Intel sound, the sound of Intel. The moment you play it, people go, I know what that is. In fact, half the time they don't know what it is, but they know more or less what it is. The British Airways music is just a bit of stolen Delebe. It's lovely, but it's associated now very strongly with the airline. They're washing you down with these lovely vibes on behalf of the brand. I mean, you could get off a really grubby British Airways flight from Dublin back to Heathrow on a Friday night feeling hot, sweaty and tired. But the moment you hear that music, you're getting the other message about British Airways, which is, actually, we're not bad and we're really quite aspirational and we've got very expensive seats that you can lie back in.
As the use of the jingle declined, other techniques became more popular. One of the best, or most irritating, depending on your point of view, is what the 1930s advertisers called a little leg pulling. For some, humour is the bane of advertising. Benny Brown, a Radio Luxembourg DJ.
And a joke's only funny one time. A joke's funny the first time you hear it. And after that, oh no, here comes that old ad. No, I don't want to hear it again. A joke really is funny only the first time you hear it. And that makes any subsequent airing of that commercial just problematic. And it turns the listener away from you because he doesn't want to hear it anymore.
But Tim Delaney thinks humour has a helpful role to play.
I think humour gives perspective. That's the reason why I like it. It's not because I want to sit there and laugh my head off every time I see an ad. It's just that if you believe that consumers are intelligent, which I do, and that if you want to talk to them and put perspective on something rather than say it's the be-all and end-all, and some people in advertising believe that's how advertising should work. I think Stan Freberg said that you're supposed to approach the brain, the forehead is the beachhead, and then you march towards the brain at the back with ever-increasing budgets. But I think my view is that you need to put messages inside the context of something, which is an argument, and humour is a way that gives that argument perspective.
Some of the best-known ads which use humour are, of course, those for Hamlet cigars. Andrew Ingram was a fan.
There is a classic Hamlet ad where there's a couple going out for the evening and she's saying to him, more or less, does my bum look fat in this? And he makes the terrible mistake, under duress, of trying to answer this question fairly and firmly.
Sweetheart, cab's here.
Darling, do you think these trousers make my bum look fat?
No, they look all right.
All right, just all right. So you think my bum's fat?
No, you said that, I didn't.
You think it looks fat?
No, love, you look gorgeous, OK? Now, come on, the cab's waiting.
You don't think they look too tight? That's...
Well, no, look... OK, maybe you should wear something different underneath, you know.
What?
Well, I mean, you know, your underwear, it's all sort of folded and creased up.
I'm not wearing any.
The match strikes, and you hear that little bit of air on a G-string, and suddenly it's a Hamlet moment. Even if you're a non-smoker, your life contains a Hamlet moment.
This ad went out in 2000, just a few years before all tobacco advertising on radio was banned in 2005. Tim Delaney used humour in the 1982 award-winning ad for Philips, which starred Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones. The commercial poked fun at the British admiration for all things Japanese in electronics at that time.
Philips would just suffered from the fact that, as they kind of do now in a way, that they do all the inventions, but the Japanese take all the credit for it. And so there was that sense that we wanted Japanese regardless. We didn't know what it was about Japanese products that we thought were sexy, but somehow anything Japanese was better than anything called Philips.
Morning, Squire.
Morning, sir.
I'd like a video caster, please.
A video recorder. Anyone in particular?
Well, I'd like to have some specifications.
Yes.
And functions. I must have some functions.
I see. Did you have any model in mind?
Well, a friend mentioned the Arikiri Kabuki Kasuni whatchamacallit, you know, the Japanese one, the 2000, because I'm very technically minded, you see.
I can see that.
So I want one with all the bits on it, all the Japanese bits, you know, the 2000.
What system?
Well, electrical, I think, because I'd like to be able to plug it into the television, you see. I've got a Japanese television.
Have you?
Yeah, I thought you'd be impressed, the 2000, the Okikoki 2000.
Well, sir, there is this model.
Yeah, well, it looks smart, yeah.
8 hours per cassette, all the functions that the others have, and I know this will be of interest. A lot of scientific research has gone into making it easy to operate, even by a complete idiot like you.
Yeah, pardon?
It's a Philips.
Doesn't sound very Japanese.
No, a Philips. I mean, a Philips. It's a Philips.
Yeah. Well, it's a 2000, is it?
Well, in fact, it's the 2023.
No, it hasn't got enough knobs on it, no. What's that one over there?
That's a washing machine.
The ad was unusual then. It was not only trying to be funny, it also used actual comedians, much rarer then than now, as Tony Hertz explains.
The very, very famous and very well-done commercial for Philips by Mel and Griff was done by Tim Delaney. It was a brilliant piece of work. That kind of started a trend, and it certainly wasn't the first commercial in the world to use famous comedians, but there was a trend around then which still continues.
Tony Hertz is right. Over the years, many more comedians have been used in radio commercials, although there were a few examples before the Philips ad. Nick Angel was involved in a campaign featuring Peter Sellers for Camping Gas in the late 1970s. The commercials, which reflected the social attitudes of the time, were based on the quiz Mastermind.
Peter Sellers pitches up at the studio, played all the parts. So he played the parts of Magnus Magnusson and then the characters sitting in the chair.
Our next contender, Kumar Banerjee, bus driver from Wapping. No points scored on your special subject, quantum mechanics. Your general knowledge questions starting now. Give the proper name for the common blue bottle.
Califora vomitoria.
No, the camping gas cartridge 200. What is Rhapsody in Blue?
A piece by George Gershwin.
No, the new camping gas symphony lamp, known as a silent symphony.
Peter Sellers recorded the questions first of all, and he left the actual gaps, and then into the gaps he would drop the responses. His timing was immaculate. His characterization was unbelievable as well.
Can we have the next contender, please? Your name?
Major Fawcett Mildew.
Occupation?
Retired explorer.
And your special subject?
Camping gas worldwide from Kenya to Keynsham.
But strangely, Major Fawcett Mildew wasn't asked how to spell Keynsham. Tim Delaney also featured another comic actor, John Cleese, in a series of ads for Sony around about the same time. He found the audience was surprisingly responsive to the exhortations of the Monty Python star.
Sonny, the electronics people, have asked me to tell you that they've just opened a fish and chip shop in Regent Street, where you can wander in and play with a fish to your heart's content without... Sorry, that's quite wrong. I got confused. It's not a fish and chip shop. It's a TV, stereo and radio showroom. Sorry, I got a bit muddled there. Doing an ad for some fish and chip shops next. Sorry.
If we mentioned a product, it used to walk out of the shops. We talked about the Regent Street showroom when it was open and people went in there directly.
So, if you want to go in and examine and operate stereo equipment or TVs, but not halibut or rock salmon or anything fishy like that, go to 134 Regent Street.
I found out then that if you tell people on the radio, this sounds quite fascist, but it's true. If you tell people to do something on radio, they will go and do it. And he asked people could you go and get some grapes from the man that sells them in Regent Street? They'll get some chocolate, take them in. They're a bit bored in there. There's no one in there. Could you take them in? And people started bringing chocolates in and grapes in. It was fantastic.
I sometimes wonder if using a well-known, easily identified personality can overwhelm a brand, even if they really help to increase sales. The use of such voices by many advertisers today suggests that they don't think so. Ad people have always given a lot of thought to the voices used in commercials, and they like to have fun with voices. For example, Tony Hertz made an ad in the late 70s for Brook Bond Choicest Tea. The intention was to move the brand upmarket using an ad voiced by Peter Hawkins.
He started off very, very posh, and by the end of the commercial had gone through a certain number of changes. There were 7 in all.
It wasn't too long ago that Brook Bond Choicest was rather exclusive tea.
And I said to him, what do you need me to do to provide you to do it? And he said, A's. Give me long A's. I.
Times have changed quite a bit. And nowadays, Brook Bond Choicest is enjoyed by many different kinds of people who want a really fine tea, particularly on special occasions. And since Christmas is a very special occasion, Brook Bond are making a special offer, which consists of 2 quarter-pound packets of choicest tea banded together and on sale at special prices. So what you want to do is this. Nip round the shops, look for the special packs of choicest with the words special tea at a special price printed in big letters and buy a packet. Of course, at times like these, it's nice to have a tea like Brook Bond Choicest that's a bit special because you never know who's going to drop in, do you?
Hawkins managed to record the whole ad in one go, but that was after 32 takes. The way voices were used in advertising has changed quite a lot over the years. In the 1960s, most of the people trying to persuade you to buy were men with deep voices, using received pronunciation and a jaunty, if slightly patronizing tone.
Looks good. Tastes good. So it should. It's Bird's Instant Whip.
Lots of girls have dry hair. Do you? You need gentle Sunsilk with lanolin cream.
The Brill Cream touch. The touch that puts life into dry hair. The touch that gives you personality.
It's the Brill Cream touch.
For that easy, relaxed confidence that Brill Cream grooming gives you.
As local advertising grew through the 70s and 80s, a new breed of travelling voice artist emerged. Andy Wint was one of them.
We were almost like bees going from flower to flower. There were a caravan of voiceovers who roamed the country, picking up commercial sessions here, there and everywhere. You'd turn up at the radio station and be presented with anything between 6 to 30 scripts. I was based in the Midlands, and I went as far north as Newcastle and as far south as Exeter, down to Brighton, down to South Wales, Cardiff and Swansea, and all points in between.
And by the time Andy Wint was doing these ads, received pronunciation was becoming passé.
There was a case of doing the same commercial for different Ford garages. Ford had a national campaign, and they decided they wanted it in local accents. So I remember particularly going to a station in the East Midlands, it's quite a Dour accent, it's a Gary Lineker accent, and doing the advert for, I think it was Sandy Acre Ford. I think you should come along and try a Ford Transit, because it's rate good. Then over to the Midlands, to Guest Motors in West Bromwich. And, I think you should drive a Ford Transit because it's very good and you get very good mileage and it's very economical. And then over to Meteor Ford in Birmingham, and it was, I think you should come to Meteor Ford in Birmingham because they're very economical and worth the money.
Did they really have to be done in different accents? Because to my ear, they were not all that different from each other.
Not phenomenally different, but if that's what the client wanted, that's what the client got. And the client was always right. And of course, with those stations, with local listeners, they would spot a fake like a canteen sausage. They knew straight away if something wasn't right, and they'd tell you.
It is a very strange thing, isn't it, asking somebody in an area who doesn't come from that area to do the accent of that area, when, as you said, everybody would see through it in an instant.
Yes, and particularly, I spent ages trying to get the way through it, and you're quite right, people do pick that up sometimes.
People wouldn't dream of using faked accents today. They want authentic voices, and now they can get the real thing, because you can get a genuine Geordie or Scot from where they live, thanks to high-quality broadcast lines. Joe McCrosty oversees the making of commercials for the network of stations owned by Global Radio.
Now, there are lots of professional voiceovers all over the country who can actually do a read over an ISDN line. And you've got a huge selection of voices from all over different regions who can normally, make a recording that day or within the next hour or 2 hours. So it means commercial radio can still deliver a national campaign, but with a local and a regional accent.
FedEx deliver your package to over 17,000 zip codes across America.
FedEx deliver your package to over 17,000 zip codes across America.
Not all ads are voiced by professional actors or voiceover artists. Some are read, sometimes live, by the DJ. Benny Brown, DJ on Radio Luxembourg, became adept at delivering the tone that clients wanted.
I must have voiced thousands of commercials in my years with Radio Luxembourg. They would always specify, look, this is the delivery I want, and sometimes they'd want you to be very nice and gentle and soft. Airlines would be one. Men voicing women's products would always be a more laid-back sell and real close to the microphone. And then sometimes you back off and you really sell what you got.
Santa Pod Raceway again this weekend, and the Rocket Man slamming Sammy Miller.
But I was certainly specialized in the fact that I would do hard sell. Anything that needed a speed delivery or an aggressive delivery, I was usually called upon for those kinds of deliveries.
It's a wild weekend. Don't miss this one. Santa Pod.
Joe McCrosty thinks that there are more effective ways of getting the audience to respond, whether you're trying to get them to go to the races or dash to a carpet sale.
You can get shouty voiceovers who sit there and tell audiences, move, go, this Sunday, hurry, prices mustn't stay this low. Where in fact, if you just say to the audience, I know you've been looking for a carpet, consider buying one this weekend because they're 20% less, that's a message. And that can be a highly efficient message to deliver.
There's very little shouting in charity ads. Charities have only been allowed to advertise on radio since 1989. They often use real people, or at least those who sound like ordinary folk. And they've been producing some hard-hitting ads.
A lot of the very best radio ads out there are ads that are done for charities. They use the imagination, they grab the emotion, all the things that radio is very strong at doing.
Mandy Wheeler has made numerous radio ads, including one produced in the mid-1990s, which took advantage of the ability of radio to pull at the heartstrings, much admired by Andrew Ingram.
There's a classic in that stable there, which is an advertisement on behalf of the Imperial War Museum, which is just a reading of a genuine letter from a young soldier in the trenches. It's just a letter to his mother.
To the best mum in the world. Dear Mum, this letter I hoped you'd never receive, because it's just a verification of that terse, black-edged card which you received some time ago. Tomorrow we go into action. No doubt lives may be lost. But if this leaves the world a slightly better place, then I'm perfectly willing to make that sacrifice. Don't get me wrong though, Mum. I'm no flag-waving patriot. No. My little world is centred around you and Dad. You are worth fighting for. And if it strengthens your security in any way, then it's worth dying for too.
It's just a wonderful, simple, direct piece of storytelling. And it uses that great ability of radio to get so up close and personal. And as such, it really, really packs a punch.
You were the best mum in the world. Goodbye. Your son.
This letter was written by a young private the night before he died in battle. At the Imperial War Museum, we don't try to glorify the war.
In a similar vein, a 1994 ad for the British Red Cross encouraged people to go on first aid courses. It features a mother whose baby stopped breathing and turned blue. Joe McCrosty.
Hugely powerful commercial. It's actually real, live audio of somebody making an emergency call.
Take 2 fingers, put them in the middle of the chest, right? Yeah. And press gently about 5 times, quickly. Okay? Yeah. Is she doing anything now?
No.
Okay.
I would defy anybody to ignore that. You cannot ignore it.
Any reaction? No. No, okay. With your fingers again in the middle of the chest, 15 times, quickly.
Her arms move. Her arms are moving.
Her arms are moving, okay.
It's the kind of commercial, it's the kind of strong sound that stops anybody, whatever they're doing. Because I think as the listener, you think you've got a responsibility to listen to the end of that ad, to check that that baby's all right.
Yeah. Okay, she's moving her arms, she must be breathing.
Right.
Okay, and her heart must be working. All right?
Yeah.
Is her arm still moving?
Yeah, got her.
Yeah. Is that her that can hear? Okay. Sit down and relax now.
Okay.
Government advertising has also increased markedly in the last decade, and the government is now the biggest advertiser on radio. Their ads, whether encouraging people to stop smoking, drive safely or join the army, also make great use of dramatic tension. Andrew Ingram again.
There's a great ad for the army, which says, listen to this, you're about to get a taste of what it's like to be in the army. And this chap walks you through it, what it's like, and you're expected to project yourself into a dark night.
Listen closely. You're about to get a crash course in using the Milan anti-tank missile. This is the sound of a British tank. This is an enemy tank. Have you got that? British tank. Enemy tank. Enemy tank. British tank. Now, just imagine that it's night. You're in a battle and armed with a Milan anti-tank missile. A tank is coming towards you through some trees. So which is it? Friend or foe? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the army, you may only have seconds to decide.
I love that ad because, in fact, having demonstrated the 2 tanks to you, then it says which one's coming out of the bushes. And I don't think it's either one of them, is it? It's like they're playing a bit of a joke on you. But you're there thinking, could I do that?
Army soldier, be the best.
In that commercial from 1997, the army was sold in a very different way from the past.
Remember back in the 70s, it was all about skiing and scuba diving and what a wonderful action life you could have in the army.
Brian Jenkins, head of radio advertising at the Central Office of Information, says today's audiences want something different.
People want honesty, which is why I think you find for the last 10, 15 years, army recruitment's been pretty blunt, actually. This is what it's like to be shot at. This is what it's like to have a tank bearing down on you. This is what it's like crawling on your belly through the jungle. Those sorts of things have appeared.
How to put the message across changed, particularly in sex campaigns, as Brian Jenkins explains.
Tastes change. For example, certain things which maybe have been acceptable 5 years ago won't be acceptable now. One of the most bizarre days I've ever had in my entire career was a meeting with the copy clearance people to discuss the language we could use in a sexual health campaign. And I was slightly surprised to find out that the word penis was not acceptable, but old chap was.
But the research behind the 2002 campaign which followed also showed a certain amount of bluntness was needed.
Yes, if you have sex without a condom, you're playing the Sex Lottery. Which of 25 sexually transmitted infections will be yours tonight? Gonorrhea!
The Sex Lottery campaign was a way of cutting through to people to talk about sex in a very British way of talking about sex, laughing about it.
Girls, be the talk of the town with an inflamed cervix. Chaps, watch your old chap disappear next to your severely inflamed testicles. It'll change your life.
And anti-smoking commercials have become increasingly hard-hitting, as these two ads from the last 5 years show. The first uses shock tactics.
This is Janice, and this is what she has to say about smoking.
We just heard the ventilator going, which was extremely powerful. In fact, so powerful that some radio stations actually refused to play it. The other one was Kirsty. Kirsty is a real person, a real girl, who was talking about her mother who had lung cancer.
I'm angry with my mum for doing this.
It's not scripted, that one. Obviously, it's a genuine statement by that young girl. You can hear from her real emotion. It really was this poor girl spilling her heart out.
I would be having to worry about finding her dead in the morning. I wouldn't have to talk about what music she once played at a funeral. I just think that, in a way, I find it slightly selfish of my mum for smoking, for never thinking of us, for us never being enough for her to give up.
That is so effective because it is the emotional testimony of a real person. Many advertising creatives, as they call themselves, argue that successful commercials need not be complicated. Nick Angel.
Ads over the years have received accolade often are quite simple. An ad that I'm reminded of is one which was to stop people using mobile phones in their cars, and it was two voices at the same time put together.
You're 4 times more likely to have a road accident when you're on a mobile phone. You're 4 times more likely to have a road accident when you're on a mobile phone. You're 4 times more likely to have a road accident when you're on a mobile phone. You're 4 times more likely to have a road accident when you're on a mobile phone. It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at the same time. Think. Switch your mobile off when you drive.
It was an incredibly simple idea, really beautifully executed. Juliet Stevenson was the voice, so great purity from her voice. Played out in drive time, so people in their cars. A really fantastic, simple idea that hit the nail on the head.
While the best ads, like that one from 2002, make their mark, some say that radio advertising is often let down by companies choosing radio for the wrong reason, because it's cheap and quick. And as a result, the quality of commercials suffers. There's no doubt that the industry is under pressure now, not just from the current economic difficulties. There is also increased competition from the internet and more opportunities to avoid ads by downloading music to MP3 players. Believe it or not, some people don't want to hear commercials. Getting our attention means that creativity is at a premium. But this doesn't stop many advertisers under pressure from resorting to unimaginative hard sell advertising. Still, there have been some ads recently that have been very successful, both in terms of catching attention and effectively promoting their product. Like this one, which has won accolades at award ceremonies.
Get this down, please, Claire. Okay. Dear Margaret.
My darling Margaret.
If I hadn't wandered into that wine bar that evening...
I feel blessed that I found you.
If I hadn't drunk that Rioja, I mightn't have spoken to you.
Destiny brought us together.
Here's to another year.
Eternity will not break us apart.
Love be.
All my love forever, Brian, your big walrus.
Very good.
Perfect.
Better employees make you look good.
But before we go, let's not forget the worst ads. There are, and always have been, plenty of truly dreadful radio ads. Boring, repetitive, crammed full of too much information, and rapid-fire delivery of phone numbers. And there are a few which simply drive us mad. Here are Mandy Wheeler and Paul Rowley with their audio annoyances.
Well, when I first came into the industry, the Houndsditch warehouse ads were on all the time, and I developed completely irrational loathing of it, and I never even knew what it was.
Houndsditch warehouse with 5 floors of bargains all waiting for you at our store.
When I came to London in the 80s, there was an ad by London Transport to the tune of Rhinestone Cowboy, the old Glenn Campbell song, for a one-day bus pass.
On a one-day bus
bus pass, and then take any bus that I want in the outer zone.
It was truly awful, but 20 years later, I still remember it.
Actually, I rather like that one, but maybe that's just because I'm a Glenn Campbell fan. I would like to end with the ad that gets my vote as the worst made but still memorable commercial. This ad is from 2004. It tries so hard, but not perhaps hard enough. It uses music you'll recognise, but then it tries and fails to time the commercial message to the rhythm of the music. The company's name is repeated too many times. Yes, it is a painful hymn to amateurism, so enjoy.
Superscreen.
Who?
Superscreen.
Who? Superscreen, that's who.
Superscreen.
Who?
Superscreen.
Who? Superscreen, that's who.
If it's a TV that you want, or could it be a video? There's only one place to go.
That's Superscreen.
You'll be surprised by the choice. You're going to be amazed at the price.
Colour Portables $49.99 from Superscreen, the region's only TV and video wholesale warehouse. Open to the public. Superscreen Cannon Park in Justice Estate, Middlesbrough, behind the Renault dealer.
Free parking!
But maybe, just maybe, such ads triumph through their awfulness. They come into that category of things that are so bad, they're good. Goodbye. Oh, and don't forget that free parking behind the Renault dealer.
Archive our radio